Okay, everyone, and welcome to Roleplayer with 1,000 Faces. My name is Matt Yancic. I'll be your humble host for this evening's festivities. I am the founder and head game master here at Manufactured Myth and Ledger Domain, and with Roleplayer with 1,000 Faces, I like to bring on creative types to talk about their art, the craft, and the science of what they do. And as you've guessed, I am going to be interviewing a large piece of Warhammer terrain today, which Mitch Michelson was not available.
Yeah.
So what he agreed to do was just leave the terrain propped up for the next hour and a half. I believe he's watching the football match.
Yes.
I think that may be it. But he has agreed to come on. I should say, this piece of terrain has agreed to come on the program. Wait a minute.
Oh,
Wait
what do
a
you know?
minute. This is. Wait a minute. He is there.
Nerdy
Mitch,
intro. Yay.
how's it going?
Good. This is the full title of this one is
Yeah.
the Overgrown Habitable Flying Buttress.
Oh, I love it. It
It just the name got stupid after a while.
does it actually fly as like maybe
No,
part of the.
a flying buttress is a thing that holds up a building.
Oh,
Um,
excellent. Oh,
see,
that's
so it's a
right.
flying buttress, but it's habitable because it has platforms and doors,
Right.
and it's overgrown.
Right.
So it's the overgrown habitable flying buttress.
It looks wonderful. Oh my God! Thank you for starting us off with that. What's funny, folks, is that when I first met Mitch 15 minutes ago, all I really saw was that huge setup that he's got there, and I was just instantly like kind of taken away, kind of transported back to that time when I was really, really young. Those younger days when I used to wargame, or at least when I used to build terrain and miniatures. It's actually really cool to see that. And as you may have guessed, if you are not familiar with who Mitch Michelson is, he is a terrain builder. He's a terrain and mini painter. He's a role player, and he is a war gamer. And he's also a self-described eccentric, and of course, as we're going to find out, he is also a philanthropist. So, Mitch, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the program. Thanks for bringing all of your awesome stuff. I'm
Thanks,
like
man.
super impressed by your setup.
It
Um,
was easy for you to get me on the show, considering who else you've interviewed. I was like, "Yep, I'm on."
oh, that is so. No, 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 no. Wait. So I may have interviewed like a few little kind of famous people, but the truth is, what I who I interview are interesting people, right? And so as far as interesting goes, like you, as far as I'm concerned, you're all on the same level. So
So yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, thanks. But Sean K. Reynolds, one of my favorite D&D, Wizards of the Coast writers he's done several things that I liked for
Hmm.
Forgotten Realms.
Hmm.
Walter John Williams, I believe he wrote Hardwired.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I've read it. I wouldn't say recently, but within the last couple of years to remind myself of. I was like, "There's a line. I think that's from that book," and I had to look at something. Yeah, it's since 2014. I remember I read it. And the other
Yeah.
one was, of course, you got DM Scotty on.
I did, of course, get DM Scotty on. DM Scotty was a lot of fun. Like
Yep,
he's been a good internet YouTube neighbor,
yep.
and so when I first started here on YouTube, I got a knock on my Zoom door one day, and DM Scotty came over with a fresh baked apple pie, a virtual apple pie. He gave it to me. So now I am extending the same, I guess, to you. Welcome to my little tiny neighborhood over here. I know it's probably not as terrainy as yours,
Yeah.
but and maybe doesn't look as cool. So, Mitch, tell us, what do you do? Who
So I
are
build
you?
terrain. Yeah.
Hmm.
So somebody came up with the phrase that what they expect from me, and this is kind of a super fan of mine, one of my core supporters, and he said I expect epic builds and tips and tricks. I was like,
Oh,
okay. So for example, this pipe thing here
yeah.
is the gun from a Warlord Titan. It's all resin. Um, but I was like, nope, it's pipes.
So, do you scratch build a lot of your
Uh,
stuff, or are
so
you?
there's a couple terms you would need to learn. I really need to put
Okay,
this to the side.
please.
It's really, 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 really big.
Yeah.
There we go. So I there's a couple words you need to know. One is scratch building, and the other one is kit bashing. Um, and they're not entirely interchangeable. There are people who do both. There's a channel called Scratch Bashing. I highly recommend. He is hysterical in the way he does things, and he literally has a box or like many boxes of toys and just junk and VCR components, whatever. He's like, I think I'll build a tank today, or I will build a a piece of terrain or whatever.
Hmm.
And it's a little bit of kit bashing in the sense that it took something that already was meant to be something,
Right.
right? And turns into something else. But mostly it's scratch building, and scratch building is literally it does not look like the thing that you're going to build it. It's those are materials. I'm largely not a scratch builder because I don't look at a toy in a toy store that's worth 50 cents or a pound or whatever and go, you know what that is?
Hmm.
That's a blank. But I do it with guns. I'm like, no, not gun, tower.
Right. You see it as something else.
Right. I see something else. So we all have that same kind of view go back in there, um, in our minds. Anyway, so that's what I do. I do also paint miniatures, and I've gotten much better at it fairly recently, 2019, 2020, with help of people like Juan Hidalgo Miniatures on YouTube, who's great, and several others. And I just figured out what I wouldn't say doing wrong, but how I was not advancing and stuff like that. But it's not a good idea for me to do miniatures on my channel because they see the word Terrainosaur and they expect terrain. So I'm
Well,
like, okay,
yeah, I was gonna say are you the actual Tyrannosaur? I was worried. I wanted
Terrainosaur
to
is the mascot.
Okay, all right. I know that you've got that little guy. He reminds me of Gon, the little Japanese
Okay,
character, a little bit. But at any rate, I didn't know, and I didn't want to offend you
that's
by
fine. It's
calling
not
you the
possible.
Tyrannosaur.
No,
So,
nicest thing my mother ever said about me was, "Don't worry about him. He's got skin like a rhinoceros."
there you
So
go. Wow, what a sweet woman.
that
Sounds
was not a
wonderful.
sweet thing to say.
So Mitch, have you been doing this for most of your life now, or is
So I've
this
been a
just
gamer
something?
since I was born a gamer, and I'm old, so that was a long time ago. We of course played family games. No, we didn't. Our family didn't like Monopoly, but we liked Sorry and Clue. In the UK, it's Cluedo,
Hmm.
and things like uh, just those family games. Um, and then my dad in the late 70s wanted to play these things called Avalon Hill games.
I remember. Yeah, I know
These are
those.
chit and hexes games, right?
Yeah,
And he tried, and I was building Spitfires and the classic Tamiya plastic
the
kits,
model kits.
yeah, exactly, and enjoying that. He, so he obviously he wasn't going to be able to play Avalon Hill games like Panzer Blitz with my mother. I was just getting old enough, so I started playing with him, and we played Battle of the Bulge and this game Submarine and Luftwaffe and games like that. And we switched hobbies. And
Oh,
he became a model railroader, and I
right.
became a gamer. Um,
Oh, what about
so
what? Oh, go ahead.
I always say that like a lot of guys they have their moment. That this isn't a truism, but and I don't know about everybody on Earth, but sometimes guys are one of two things. They either something happened that they liked and they're always trying to get back to that,
Right.
or they're trying to get something they can never get to. And I think we know those personalities, right? I hit something and I've never wanted to go anywhere else. Me around a table, very similar to this, chatting, friendly competition, having
Right.
fun, whatever,
Right.
just banter, just sitting around a table, playing games, whatever, painting, building, whatever. That's my zone. That's where I'm at.
Are you still
Um,
playing those Avalon Hill games, or like you
I
bring them out
no,
every once in a while, or?
no, because nobody will play them anymore. um,
Oh, that's awful.
well, game design has gone on, so there are better
Yeah.
games. And I saw the spectacle of Romans playing, ancients in a game on a green mat in my basement when we had my dad had some guys over to play at our house so that I could see what it was like. And that's what I call the spectacle.
Hmm.
Of tabletop miniatures and terrain. That's it. I'm sold. I've never gone back.
Hmm.
And I recently told my favorite fantasy train maker Pikasawi on Instagram. I said, one picture he put up. I said, "This brings me back. This is the spectacle I was
Right.
looking for." You can't tell if it's a video game, reality, or he made it. Um,
Nice.
so,
Yeah.
so I've always been relatively creative, a little
Hmm.
bit more than average. I'm really not that smart. I'm really not that creative, but I'm quite driven, and that helps. Yeah, I've always pretty much been that way.
Do you
It's
think
always been
that
a
I
passion.
don't know if maybe that you've had this experience, but I often feel like when I'm playing, and of course I'm definitely a role player. I would
Yep.
say that I haven't wargamed in forever. But do you think that you're sort of being taken back to when you were a kid, or do you think like the adult Mitch is enjoying it and becoming a kid, or what do
Yeah,
you?
I don't look over my shoulder. I have anxiety now, thanks to Parkinson's, but
Mhm.
I am immune to depression. I don't look back. I mean, I want to grow. I want to mature. I want to get better and
Mhm.
acknowledge mistakes, or
Right.
improve and things like that, like any grown adult, I hope. But um, yeah, when it comes to I already forgot your question.
Well, I was just
Oh,
asked.
am I trying
Mhm.
to nostalgia? No, nostalgia doesn't have a big appeal for me. I want to go forward and hit that level that of skill that makes me go, ooh, I did that. And like who knew that that could be possible? And it's really weird if you're online a lot when somebody that's like flat out famous in our
Yeah.
nerdy little world, right?
Yeah.
Says, I like your stuff, by the way. It's like, and I'm not bragging when I say this happens to me all the time. I jokingly say I'm the channel that the other channels watch, like, like, because I am not following in other people's footprints. I'm trying to do something new, something different every time.
Yeah.
I'm never going to make a video of how to paint yellow.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do a video about how to make dungeon tiles.
Yeah.
That would be smart for me to do that, but I can't. I just can't. I can't. It just doesn't work.
S- So then let me ask you then, what if you're not following in others' footsteps and
Yep.
if you're doing kind of your own thing, can we talk about maybe what some of your influences were and maybe figure
Yeah.
out
So
how you got where you are now?
I mentioned one, and that was Hardwired for Cyberpunk,
Mm-hmm.
and that easy to read, fast-paced kind of stuff. So I really enjoyed that. iRobot, Lord of the Rings,
Mm-hmm.
all that kinds of stuff. Frank Frazetta, come on, man! Like if you
I
can
know,
look at
right?
Frank, yeah, I swear there's some things that I think like if you don't like it, you should not talk to me. like, like, so I showed a picture of four people, and it was Ozzy Osbourne, Billy Connolly, the
Yeah,
comedian,
yeah, yeah.
Ian Holm, the guy who played
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Bilbo, and Michael J. Fox. And I said, what do these four people have in common with me? They all have Parkinson's. And the hi Ricker, here we go, cat.
Hey, there we go. Those are
and
those cats, those internet
yeah,
cats.
and I said, if there's something, if you don't like something about these four guys, get
Yeah.
out. I don't need to talk to you. If you
Well,
don't like something in there, if you don't like Bilbo or
with the
Black Sabbath,
exception of Ozzy, they were actually all influences on me, and
yeah,
probably if they were an influence on me, then they continue to be an influence on me because they basically, for sure, um, for sure, Michael J. Fox when I was growing up. I mean,
sure,
I do remember I wanted to be Alex P. Keaton, or at
yep,
least I
yep,
sort of thought I wanted to be him. As I grew up, I realized I actually didn't want to be him,
I
but
understand.
I appreciated like his energy and his enthusiasm,
Yeah, he was
and
a
maybe
parody for yuppies. I get it.
yes, yes. So
Yes,
in a way, I kind of understand where you're going with that. How do you
yeah.
think? Oh, go ahead.
Let me summarize and say that the true source for me, when I think like I could use a little bit of energy, which is rare, but
Mm-hmm.
when I'm looking for something, is just heavy metal and hard rock. And
Mm.
I'm looking for new stuff. I'm looking for old stuff. I once made a list of my favorite bands, and it was like nothing more recent than 1992 or something like that. And since then, like I've expanded into like brand new bands that nobody's ever heard of, and just like yeah, I can't get enough of the metal.
It's funny though that you mention that because on my tiny little stream, on my tiny little channel, I'm running this summer a supers game, and
Cool.
what's kind of goofy, and I'll maybe I can send you a secret track after this. But what's kind of
Yeah.
funny is that for each hero, we were using songs that I have a friend that I have quite a few friends that are really talented musicians that
Good.
compose. And one of the heroes that my friend had come up with was a character called the Eternal Trooper, which
Yeah.
was
Cool.
based on Iron Maiden's Eddie,
The the trooper,
and
right?
he also happens to be like an amazing drummer and musician. And so he just
Nice.
sent me this morning this track for his theme, which he wants me to use on the intro. And
Nice.
it's kind of interesting the way that like music can kind of, at least for me, like Iron Maiden when I was in high school was like a big influence, at least
Yep.
as far as like energizing and propelling me
Yep.
forward and kind of motivating me. Can I ask, are you still listening to music? Do you listen to music like when you're building or when you're
I
painting or?
can't. My brain doesn't work that way.
Oh,
So my brain entertains me. So it's a distraction. So I can only listen to instrumental. So the thing is, you can go on to YouTube and just type the name of the song and then the word instrumental, and it's frequently been the vocals have been taken out.
mm-hmm,
The song "Du Hast" by Rammstein is a good one.
mm-hmm,
It just really works. But yeah, you can find lots of them. I really like Chris Poland, I don't want to bore you with the references. The original
mm-hmm.
guitar player for Megadeth, and now a jazz player. So yeah, I can listen to him, but by and large, I cannot listen to music because I'll stop and go, "Oh, I like that part." No, I
I
need to
I
keep
know
working.
what you're talking about because I have kind of like two types of music that I listen to. If I'm writing or studying, in that case, I will listen to instrumental. If I am doing something, say, with my hands, then I can actually listen to something with lyrics. But I can totally understand because as a teacher, I'm often actually trying. A lot of parents will dissuade children from using music, and I kind of stop them and I say, well, okay, there are times when music does distract, but let's take a look at
Yeah,
what your son or daughter is doing. Are they actually using it to fuel them and to move them forward, or is it a genuine distraction? And it sounds like to me, you know what distracts you and you know what
yeah.
fuels you. So I think that that's super important.
Know yourself, and you'll never lose a battle, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you know yourself, you're totally right, and that's I think extremely important. Um, well, then tell me though. It looks like the wargaming came to you first, right? So you
Yep.
and your dad trade hobbies, and you become an Avalon Hill wargamer, and you're playing all these games. Was there, of course, the minis and the terrain and all that clicked for you, but what was it about wargaming and those minis and the terrain that sort of caught your attention, as opposed to say maybe?
I just use the word spectacle. So
Hmm.
if you so the the spectacle of playing at my house is a little extreme.
Hmm.
At least when playing Necromunda or a tabletop war game. Still the same. I run a regular D&D group. So yeah, that was my second thing that I found. And so yeah, the spectacle is I am attempting to go all the way. Like it's
Hmm.
playable, right?
Hmm.
But this thing over here is just a bridge. That's all it is. It's like 90% stuff
Yeah,
and 10% bridge.
right.
So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do is just get to the point where, well, okay, so it's immersion. A lot of people really like that word right now. It's feeling like you're in that world, and you can feel it, right?
So when you're
So
wargaming, is that because I know my own personal experiences from it, but when you're wargaming, you feel like you're in that war game, you're in that battle, you're
yep,
in that moment, you're in that time.
yep,
So I think that that's actually something that's super important as an adult. What's funny is I was talking to a friend of mine, or actually, yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a therapist, and when I explained this to her, she called it adult play.
sure.
And I thought to myself, oh yeah, that is kind of like what this is. It's adult play.
Except
Except.
it's better than in addition, I should say,
Hmm.
it's not just a play. It's not sitting there passively doing things, and you'll catch it. We do this all the
Yeah.
time. Is not criticize, but be a little bit ferocious about, like, you don't have to go play Mario because you're bored, right?
Right.
You don't have to play Call of Duty. Do it if you want to, for God's sakes. Don't let me be a gatekeeper and tell you what you should be doing with your life.
Mm.
But like, if you are a tabletop gamer playing D&D, Pathfinder, whatever,
Hmm.
you don't have to go, I'm just lost. I just can't paint anymore, right?
Right.
There are ways around that, the pile of opportunity, stuff like that. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, so it is adult play. But the reason why I reacted was it's productive. My mother
Yeah.
never got gaming until as an adult. She saw me build a castle or something, and she went, "Oh," and that like, it's like a dollhouse thing. She
Yeah.
was like, it's art. And I was like, yes, it's art. It's productive art. You have a thing to show afterwards.
Hmm.
You have the miniature that you painted, regardless of your skill. You have the dungeon tiles that you made. The You learned how to paint yellow, whatever. And so it's not just um, it, it's not just I sat there and watched telly.
No, I totally agree with that. And it kind of goes with what you were saying earlier about maybe moving forward. And I think that everything that we do, like a lot of times students in my class will say, why am I learning the multiplication tables? How is this useful to me? And it's not necessarily the learning of the multiplication tables. It's not knowing that like 8 times 8 is 64 that
It
is
is?
important, but it's actually the exercise of using those muscles and building those muscles in your brain so that
Yep.
later on you may be able to, because there are like three stages of sort of learning something. There's a chemical stage,
Okay.
there's the physical stage where your brain changes, and then there's
Yeah.
the third stage, which is where you take one skill and you lay it on top of another. So that when you, instead of maybe lifting a weight, what you're really trying to do is lift something carefully outside, your body realizes that there's a connection between lifting that weight and lifting something outside, and you learn how to do it, or do it better.
Two things to make a comment about that. DIKW is data, information, knowledge, wisdom.
Hmm.
So data is just a fact. Information is facts put together. Knowledge is what does that mean, and wisdom is assimilating it, knowing how. Seeing when you see those facts
Hmm.
start up again in the future, you're like, that's going to turn into this. So for my example is I always like to say, why does El Nino, the Pacific weather pattern, affect whether you're going to get answered when you call for help on a product? Because El Nino causes storms in the Pacific, which go over the islands, including the
Hmm.
Philippines, which have a lot of call centers. And when they shut down, you can't.
Oh,
Those companies who outsource some of their work to the call centers suddenly are slammed with calls because they're
right,
in-house people in Omaha, Nebraska, or in
right.
Chandler, Arizona, or whatever. Suddenly don't have enough people to handle the calls.
It is an
So
interconnectedness of all
yeah,
things.
yeah. So that, and the other one was really important. If you're young and listening, listen to this. You can get paid for remembering school.
Oh yeah?
I got,
How? Tell us.
and the simple answer is I get paid because I remembered math class, not differential equations, not calculus, nothing beyond geometry. But I can explain standard deviation to the executive who says, "Oh, I'm dumb. I don't understand that." I'm like, "Wrong. I will explain it to you." And in 2 minutes, they're like, "I get it." I'm like, "Correct."
Right.
So yeah, that ability to say, okay, the reason why this number jumps around is the sample size is too small, um, and that's standard deviation. And so when I do things like that, I get paid because I remembered math class and logic and things like that. And so like, you know, you don't have to like memorize it or anything like that. But now let's get right to the hobby stuff. If you don't know Pythagorean theorem, you can't do this stuff. You just
Well, I was going
can't.
to
If you don't,
ask you, how are those, do you think the fact that, you know your math is related to enjoying the war games, or is it
yeah, it's
something?
just handy skill. So there's four skills. I've been trying to put this together into something that makes sense, but there's four skills for certainly being
Hmm.
a crafter or a terrain builder,
Hmm.
and that's study and experiment. So you see something and don't go, "Oh, that's magic," and walk away. You
Hmm.
failed at that point.
Hmm.
So study it and go, okay, what am I actually looking at here? Like, was it edited? Was the photo edited?
Right.
Or is there something there? Can I look? Can I click next and see how the work in process pictures, whatever? Study it. The other one is
Right.
experiment. If you only do what other people do, you'll never come up with something kooky. And so like I painted these little, okay, this is kind of gross, it's horror terrain, but this, or the skull and stuff like this,
Hmm.
and this bloody banner down here,
Hmm.
stuff like this. And people are like, how did you do that? And I'm like, it's skin colored paint. I just put skin colored paint on the model. And they're like, that's gross. I'm like, right, I painted skin colored paint on a skull. What did you? And there's a gun in his mouth, a heavy bolter. It's weird, right? So yeah, if you got to
It's
experiment, and that's what will throw people.
it's also
Um,
beautiful. I really wish I could actually
thanks.
see those things up close. They're like really.
Instagram Terrainosaur.
That's true, right? Yeah, there you go. And it's also linked to in the description, folks.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
if you guys
But
want to
so
check it
so
out, please do.
so study and experiment. Um,
Hmm.
what Brits call maths. It's plural here for some reason.
Hmm.
But hey, don't show your butt, kid. There you go. So yes, mathematics, and that's especially areas, Pythagorean theorem, simple formulas and things like that, fractions and things like that. You'll. Did I get? Okay.
No, you're
Hey,
a
don't.
okay.
So the cat took the mouse. So the you'll see the other crafters on YouTube in particular show like
Hmm.
how they measured and angles and things like that. They do it instinctively. So if you don't know that, it's a little problematic.
Right.
So it's study. Oh, and then the other one. This is a weird one. Is find, especially for scratch builders. You got to be able
Yeah.
to find stuff.
Yeah.
And if you can't source something, if you can't find, you can build one thing, but if you can't get more of those things, you're really going to have a problem. So,
Mm.
if you're looking for plastic gems that look a certain way, you got to get like 500 of them if you ever plan on using more. But yes, so mathematics is kind of important.
Excellent. So then with that, I also wanted to ask you, because I wanted to find out a little bit about how you feel the differences are, because you've mentioned this several times. From watching your channel, I had gotten the impression that, of course, you say in your About section that you play D&D or you play role-playing games, but you also wargame. But the impression I got from looking at all of your stuff and your tutorials was that you were maybe more of a wargamer. But I
No,
don't know if that's really, yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if that's really true. Are you,
no, I play D&D every week.
ah,
I'm the major DM for our group. We switched to other people to give them a chance to learn how to be a DM when we went to Roll20 because of COVID.
mm-hmm.
But no, so I spend most of my time sitting there going, how can I do that better in D&D, specifically D&D Fifth Edition, not just like in general. I am mostly that, and then so I don't really differentiate between painting miniatures, building terrain, or playing D&D and stuff like that. If I put one D&D video on my channel, it would kill my channel though. Like the algorithm and the audience do not understand. So unless it said Terrainosaur for role-playing games, or like no, it literally would get 0 views. My next video would get even fewer because the algorithm would get confused. So it's
Th-
frustrating, but still.
This is something I've only interviewed a few people that have actually have their own channels. How did you become and of course everyone out there, the few people that are out there watching my channel, they know that obviously I'm new at this, but I've got less than 200 subscribers at this point. But how was it that you figured out the algorithms?
I
What was
didn't.
it
That's the
just,
problem.
oh,
So actually, I don't use it though. The two channels you need to look at that are very good at figuring out the algorithm are Black Magic Craft and Narb Makes. You've got an existing one and a brand new one. Narb knows how to do things. He knows how to do the algorithm.
mm,
And he's the first person that I collaborated with, and we get along quite well. And if anybody says you know the algorithm, I'm like, I know it, I don't use it. So
mm-hmm.
very big people elsewhere have said, we should talk to Mitch. And I'm like, correct, but unless you're going to do things the YouTube way, don't like, if you're going to do it that way, don't talk to me, because I like, who to talk to,
So
right?
what is it that caused you to say, you know what, screw the algorithm, I'm going to do it my way? Like, can you tell me about like that kind of, obviously you have a lot of passion and feeling about this, but what gives you that?
What's passion?
Yeah, that
I'm
passion to
crazy.
just do it your way.
so so it's
Could
so
be.
2020. So 2020, I was like, people said something about seeing something on YouTube about like, crafting and terrain. I was like,
Hmm.
what? It's on YouTube? I knew it was everywhere else, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. But I was like, I know painters are like, miniature painters are on YouTube, but like terrain builders are on there. And they said, yeah. And I went on, and I'm seeing like 100,000 subscribers and massive views. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh wow, that
Yeah.
door opened, right? And I thought, I'll do that, because I had two videos that I popped up on in 2014. I said, I can do that. In my first video, I said this funny, it's a really hysterical sentence now. I don't care how many views I get, 1,000 or 100,000. Like, you're gonna start with 100,000,
Right.
right? It does
Who
not work that way.
knows? Who knows?
Not every video. So there's a YouTube way for those
Yeah.
folks, and
Huh.
if you watch those channels, you will. But I had to build up a following of subscribers and attention for me to do how to paint with tremors, which is why I was on YouTube in 2020. And it did well. It did beyond my highest expectations of what I was
Hmm.
hoping for. And it got quite a bit of attention. That was good, and raised money and all that kinds of stuff. But the rest of the year, just poked around and just like, I did what other people were doing in some cases, and did whatever, and the channel just flatlined, just like 300 views per video. Could not figure it out. And I said, and then I briefly, I'll say that I came to the conclusion that I would like to do this as my next job, and my last job is to build terrain, paint miniatures, make videos, or put it on the internet somewhere
Hmm.
and get donations. But the only way to do that was I had to act like I was trying to. You have to actually act like you're trying to do that. I mean, for the platform or whatever. So I got really consistent. I went terrain, 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 40K videos multiple times in a row. Then I did painting videos for a while, and the channel went.
Hmm.
Even like, I had names on there, right? And it was just like, what? And that's when people said, look, you have to do one thing, only one thing, and never deviate from that. And I was like, okay. And so like, and then I tried to rebuild. And then I've had some help from major channels and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really frustrating. It's worse on other. It's worse on other platforms, namely Instagram. If you do one thing and one thing only, you'll get really rewarded, and if
Mm-hmm.
you do anything off of it, you get punished. And YouTube will punish you, as it will stop giving you impressions because it's like, I don't know who you are. So there's a big miniature painting channel called Miniac, and I said it I think earlier is people go to Miniac to see him paint miniatures. They don't go to Miniac, that's in the name, to see terrain or crafting, right? It's not Craftiac, right?
Mm.
I'm nowhere near his size, and I probably never will be, but they don't go to Terrainosaur to see miniatures. It's not what they think of. Even my own core supporters have literally said they're not interested they're like, if I want to see somebody paint miniatures, even amateurs, I'll go to that channel.
Let me ask you then, does that were you painting to try to increase your channel's visibility, or were you
No,
doing it because you just liked to do it?
so Juan and Doggo's got a big 40, 50,000 subscriber channel. We get along really well. I like the guy a lot. We can't wait to hang out sometime. He'll come up to London sometime. We're good friends. And I started getting better because of him, and I started hitting like new levels. And then I started talking to him about it, which he does with his supporters. He's really good about that. And then I just went boom and just blew up in terms of my skill and got out of the good amateur range. And so it's like, what if we did videos together? So we did 3 of them, and it literally was like I was building up 40K terrain, right? And it like this, and I did it because I wanted to. And I've told people after that, team members of mine, whatever, is we do whatever we want to. So if you
Mm-hmm.
got, it's passion first, like
Yeah.
whatever. But there, you will not see another painting video on on Terrainosaur ever again. Because I can't. I can't do just like how to paint. Oh, the joke is how to paint yellow or something like that. How to
Right.
paint, this new 40K miniature. No one will see it, and then the algorithm will go, I am lost again. What are you trying to tell me? Because
Right.
it's a dumb child. Anyway, so I don't want to talk about YouTube too much, but so yeah, I have said before, it's terrain forward, terrain plus forever for Terrainosaur. That is the thing that we do.
So then tell
Crafting.
me, who are some builders and painters that you admire, and how do you feel what do you feel when you look at someone else's work and you're like,
Okay,
wow, that's what are you thinking?
so I'll tell you how I do it, and then what I recommend too. And I don't normally tell people how to live their lives or what to do, but when you're in a museum or whatever, when you see something, just let yourself feel it, right? Don't intellectualize it. Don't sit there and go, I wouldn't have done it that way. And I hate that, right? Just go, cool. Why do I like this? Just
Mm.
stand there and feel it, right? And then after that, go, all right, how did he do that? And sometimes you just laugh and go, I walk away. Somebody did a video recently with object source lighting, and I almost used profanity in my comments to
Wait,
say,
wait, wait. What is object? Can you help us? What is object source
object source
lighting?
lighting is I'm holding a torch up like this, and
Yeah.
the light is hitting here, so it's dark down here.
Mm.
So my object source lighting, my light is coming from up here in this light up here mainly, right? But I have another light coming from the sides and things like that. So object source lighting is normally like there's let's say a fire down by your feet, like a
Mm-hmm.
campfire, but you're also holding a torch. So you're lit from 2 directions. So that's
Mm-hmm.
object source lighting.
Right.
It's not easy. It
Mm.
mainly is done with an airbrush. And he did a video, and I was like, I'm not trying that. Like, no, that's so I fully appreciate the video was fantastic. That's 52 miniatures, and I really appreciated the video and I appreciated the results. But I was like, no, I'm not. I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to buy an airbrush. And I have too many disciplines I have to learn now. I'm not
Mm.
adding that one. So yeah. But anyway, so my reaction is for builders, in particular, regardless of what they paint, is first just feel it, just look at it and go, do I like it? What does this make me feel? Whatever, and then intellectualize it afterwards. Sometimes walk away and come back and say, is this like approachable? Is this something I could do?
Right.
In which case, like, how close is it to me? And I don't look at things the same way other people do. Is I don't get intimidated. I have no fear of man or beast. Like, I just am like, hmm. So when I saw some of the famous ones, who I am good friends with now on Instagram, and I insult them all the time. I'm like,
That's how you know you're a good friend.
yeah, yeah.
You can
Um,
do that
I,
and remain a good friend.
I told Saul Vince, who is probably the number one Necromunda builder and possibly the number one builder like on Earth, certainly one of the most famous. I said, you know what I call you? He said, I wonder how people talk about me. And I said, I can tell you. I've literally heard the word demigod used about you twice. And
That's
he's like,
pretty
really?
good.
And I said, so here's the problem is that, do you want to hear what I call you? And he's like, yeah, go. And I said, I call you an Instagram necro diva. And all right, everybody get down. Cats are getting in front here. And he said, I take that. I like that. So what I meant was Instagram Necromunda builders and
Yeah.
a diva because they're so famous.
Yeah.
So I call them IG Necro Divas. And the other one is Leo from Rapid Tabletop, who just we really like each other quite a bit. And I call him that too. And it's just like because they do one thing. They
Mm-hmm.
do specifically Necromunda, and there's an article on Polygon recently about like the art in 40K and
Mm-hmm.
tabletop gaming
Mm-hmm.
is in Necromunda right now. And I'm not really like part of it in the sense that like I'm not considered like a leader or anything like that.
Yeah.
But people are like, we get what you're doing. It's in the same vein, and we're going to click like. So yeah, and they really enjoy it. And because I build so big, there's only one guy who builds bigger than me, and I found out he liked my work too. And I was like, cool. I was like, great. And he builds like 6 foot tall structures.
Oh my God, that is huge.
Yeah,
He
Neil
builds 1-1 scale structures.
1-1
So
scale
big.
hive cities. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah, so that's Neil 101. I really like his work and stuff like that. But yeah, so do that, and then you have to decide: are you going to study, experiment, learn your maths,
Right.
find the sources, and build the thing.
Right.
And I did that this year, and I've gotten close to some of them, and I'm trying to beat them.
Well, then let me
Because I get
ask
really
you
competitive.
a follow-up to that then. What is it? Is there, so my question that I'd sort of planned was, is there a Mitch Michelson method or
Yeah, I
approach
told
to
you.
building? But I'm also sort of thinking, what is it that you like about your own style? Like take off your modesty cap, and as a teacher that I am, I'm telling you, tell us what you think is great about your own style. What do you like?
Well, so it was this guy who follows me everywhere, and he said, what I expect from you is epic builds and tips and tricks.
Mm,
And the thing about the tips and tricks is that they're not anything anybody else has ever done, or you can't find a video anything on this. The hot coals was somebody else's idea that was close to what needed to be done, and I was like, okay, you need a video. And so I did that back in 2014. Paolo Parente, the artist, I guarantee you've seen his work in role playing games before. He came up with he plays Necromunda, and he came up with a way of painting with smashing the paint on, like literally physically smashing the paint
right.
onto it and then wiping it off. The rust technique. And I said, you need a video, and he was like, great, do that.
Well, the hot
um,
coals thing that you're mentioning, because I think we were talking about this before we actually went live. I want to remind maybe people. So one of the videos that Mitch, or one of the tutorials that Mitch made was about painting hot coals. And one thing that kind of impressed me about what he was doing, and I guess I like to write, and we were talking about this as well. Like as a game master, like achieving verisimilitude is like super important and vital. But one of the things that Mitch did in the video of hot coals was he said, well, this is what they typically look like when you see hot coals painted. But you know what? This is not what they actually look like in real life. And so he actually went that extra step of sort of like saying, okay, we're going to set aside how they're traditionally painted, and we're going to see what we can do to create a more accurate one. So I definitely think for sure that was one of the things that kind of I noticed right off the bat maybe about your channel was you do have those moments. So in that respect I think that's a great quality.
Thanks. I know how to beat that, by the way. Um,
Beat it then, please.
no, beat the hot coals.
Oh,
I figured out what the problem was.
what?
Like last year. No, I'm not going to tell you.
What? What?
So I figured out what the problem was. There is no material you can buy. This goes back to trying to find or source the material, whatever.
Mhm.
And so I tell you how to make the coals and then put the thing on there. I have seen people use it and they're like, well, what do you know? It works. I'm like, yeah. Again, it wasn't 100% my idea. I think it was about 49% my idea, in fact. But I did figure out what like after 6 years, I suddenly went, oh, I know what I did. I know how to fix that now.
Mhm.
Like how to shorten the steps so it's now practical.
Right.
I do a couple others of how to do bases with using plaster. If you sprinkle plaster and then spritz water over it, the little nodules of plaster absorb the water and harden into like rocks. You dry brush it, it looks totally like earth. It's really, really easy. And so there's several of those where I've used something like it's pretty quick if you realize what I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
Somebody imitated my cobblestone method where you can actually paint
Mhm.
the cobblestones on, and he did it really well. And it was on Instagram, and he tagged me for it. And he said, it's actually easier than you think. And I'm like, I agree. Nobody's willing to try painting cobblestones on there. It is not hard at all. It is
Mhm.
not like technically difficult, but people are like, why don't you just dry brush it? I'm like, Okay, one more time. It's a flat surface that has a
Right.
cobblestone texture
Right.
painted on it. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that.
And for those people who are watching at home, what is dry brushing?
Sorry, dry brushing is so you take here, so you take paint, tap it onto the brush, wipe it off so it's gone,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then so you cannot see it, and then when you go like this on the surfaces, it only catches the surfaces. Usually it's a lighter color, and it like taps those surfaces. So dry brushing is a core skill that you should learn pretty quickly in terrain building or in miniature painting.
So then, can you tell me a little bit? There was so the idea of the Mitch Michelson style. I hear
Yeah,
you mention a lot piles of opportunity.
yeah.
What are these piles of opportunity?
There's an unfortunate hashtag called piles of shame, which is the idea that especially people who play, well, some people who play board games for the big Kickstarter games that have like 300 miniatures in them and they're unpainted, and that the more games you buy, including board games, role-playing games, miniatures, obviously Warhammer from Games of Workshops that are Rangers of Shadow Deep, Frostgrave, whatever, is that you end up with an increasing pile of gray miniatures
Right.
unpainted, and the idea is that the notion is that this is shameful, and that you are like your partner is like, have you painted all the ones you've got? No.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not my mom.
Yeah.
But so I object to that because, and I've said this in several videos, is that my theory is if you have 10 projects to do, you can't be bored with all 10.
Right.
So just like go pull out something from under the bed. Go, I remember this. I was going to paint this army. Look, here's what you do. You pull it out. Leave it out. Do not store it again. And tell yourself, if I don't get this done by, or at least started by the end of the year, I'm going to sell it or I'm going to finish it. Do something to say, motivate yourself. And
Mm.
I'm not a good person to talk to about motivation because I don't run out. And I'm not like bragging. That's just the way my brain works.
Mm.
But that notion of like, if you're looking for something exciting to do, you will probably already own it. You've got
Right.
that little unit of craft world Eldar. You've got that little that miniature of a ranger or a wizard. You've always wanted to paint Gandalf,
Yeah.
right, or something like that. Do it or pick another one.
I think that's
Just
great. I actually, this reminds me of something that happens commonly with books, right? So, how
yep.
many people do you know who have bought 50 times the number of books that they've actually read? But
So
here's the thing. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, talk to an agent.
Hmm.
Ask a literary agent who are like, by the way, 70% female. By the way, they're a really specific type of person, and ask her, like how much unread you have. They get like a box a week.
Yeah,
If you're a literary agent and you don't like to read, you're in the wrong
I
field.
know,
You
right?
better read fast, and I
But
mean you better be able to get a book a day out, right?
you know what
And
the
they floor to
oh,
ceiling, they have books.
do you know what the good thing about that though is? I like when it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm having trouble sleeping, or something happens, and I walk over to my bookshelf, and for some reason, a book that I bought 7 years before that I never, or that maybe I tried to read twice and couldn't do, or I never even opened up, I just think, that's the book I need to read now. And before I know it, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm 100 pages in, and I'm like, why
Yep.
didn't I read this earlier? So I would imagine it could be the same for just about anything, of
Yep.
course.
I have because of Parkinson's, I have extremely restless, including restless leg syndrome and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So I'm mentally and physically quite restless. I rarely sleep more than 2 to 3 hours in a stretch, and I wake up with ideas, and they're good. So some of them are great. Sometimes I like write it down, come back the
Right.
next day. Go, this would be really good if it wasn't against the laws of physics.
Right. That
Wow, that would be
is
great.
that's a tough one to violate there. If you're going to violate
Yeah,
laws, those are difficult to
yeah,
violate.
yeah.
Um,
So yeah. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say, you also mentioned in your videos that sometimes, and I don't know how much of this is just, you seem to me, when I watch your videos, you have a very good-natured kind of sense of humor about what you do, and you seem to obviously, it's obvious to anyone watching that you have passion and you like what you're doing. But you do mention from time to time how, like, sometimes when you're working on something, you just hate it. And you sort of force yourself, maybe, I feel like something has just
This
been
is the
brought
one I
up on
said.
cue. As if-
I didn't think of this until you said it. This is the one I said I hated.
oh,
So I
is
had no,
that's the one?
yeah.
Okay.
So I have said that subsequently after that. So the point, my idea was I wanted a flying buttress in
Hmm.
in the 40K universe, in Necromunda in particular, that was a flying buttress. But they had so the gang members had built around it like a favela or something like that, right down here,
What
the
is a
corrugated metal.
favela?
Brazil, it's a Brazilian word for ghetto.
Oh, okay.
Those shanty towns.
Yeah.
So a shanty town built around it,
Hmm.
and stuff like that, and they'd sort of built into it, right? And then I came to and I built it, and it was fine, and that was I think that was the collaboration with Narb, and then I didn't know how to paint it, and I painted it like 3 different ways, and I just like I could not get it. No, that was the one over there, and who was this was Steve Famine, and I could not paint it, and just
Hmm.
over and over and over, I couldn't figure it out, and Steve said, overgrow it. Because I have another piece that I put these vines on.
Right. Right.
And I went, oh, and then I didn't have to paint it. so now I have
Perfect.
so now I have 3 pieces of terrain that are the overgrown style, and I just roughly painted them with metallic paints, whatever. But then once you put the vines over it,
Yeah.
it gives it a totally new look. No one's looking at the fact you didn't weather it or anything like
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
and it looks like a thing. It's
Yeah.
like it's got an appeal or whatever.
So in this
Um,
particular case, your hatred at
yep,
at a certain point just sort of broke, and
yep.
because you came up with that idea. But how would you normally, is that a common thing, or does it occasionally happen where you're like, I'm just so sick of this piece, or this piece is not coming together, or that doesn't look right, or do you have a
I
method for pushing through that and
Yeah,
continuing?
I am again not a great person to talk to about how I deal with what other people would call creative block,
No
or
problem.
things like that. I say things that are kind of mean, like, look, there are people who get stuff turned in on time, and there are people who don't. There is no such thing as motivation. It physically does not exist. If you boil the universe down to a single atom, into atoms, you would not find an atom of motivation. These things do not exist. They are concepts. So how you deal with them is purely psychological thing, and
Hmm.
you have to figure out yourself of how you're going to do that. I can literally just push through. It's just a job. It's just a task to be done, right? If I'm at work and I have to put like 1,000 rows into an Excel file and then export it and import it and do all the stuff, whatever, it just gets done,
Right.
because there's a deadline, right? And I do put like long lists on myself and stuff like that. But if I hit a point where I'm like, I want to get past it, but I
Yeah.
can't because I
Yeah.
just don't have an idea, you have to shelve it. And so that's actually the point. That is the model that I had for Pile of Opportunity. It was sitting next to me when I said that the first time, was like, go find something else to do, whatever,
Yeah.
and turn around. There's this idea with writers that you're supposed to put something down and come back 3 years later and read it again, um, and go, oh, and then you'll see all your flaws, and they go, okay, I see what happened, whatever. So there is a point to put things down and come back to them at least a couple days later and go,
Right.
all right,
So
what happened here?
So then you're saying that when it comes to, as far as ideas on how to proceed, you may set it aside and then come back to it a few days later. But as far as motivation goes, you're just going to do it. Like
Yeah,
you've got it. You're on a roll. You're going to continue. You're going to get
yeah.
through it.
I was born on a roll. That's not going to change. So fortunately, it was Steve Famine, a guy who's a really good train builder, who said it in the comments on Instagram, and I was like, of course he's right. Like, and then in an instant. So the lesson here, in terms of if you're interested in starting a YouTube channel or putting things on Instagram or putting it out there for people to see, is talk to people. They will answer. You can talk to the top people. They will answer. You ask me, what can I do with this thing, and I'll give you 7 things you can do.
Mm.
Like, okay, what if you do this? Okay, I'll annoy you with. I'll come back a month later. Go, I had another idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not tops by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, you can ask. Some of them are very, very busy, so you can't, like, you'll not get a response. But that doesn't mean that they're not. They would like to, but they can't.
It
So
is something I've sort of discovered, and it's
yeah,
something I always. What's funny is I used to, or I always do. I tell my students if they have a question about something, I'm like, well, why don't you just like call the museum, or why don't you just email
yep.
someone? And they're like, they're busy. And I'm like, no, just give it a try. But invariably, 99% of the time they get a response. It may not be
Yeah.
exactly the timing they want, but they do get a response, and
So
it's really interesting the way that
yeah, so
we.
that's the other skill, is just people skills.
Mm,
Just talk to people. So you talk to me, and I was like, I went and looked at your channel and went, not a lot of views. Oh my God, look at all these people. I want to be there. It's like, just give people a reason to say yes.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. And that's the experience it's been. That's the weird thing is that I was so shocked at the number of people when I just reach out and I say, hey, this is kind of what I want to do. And you had mentioned Sean K. Reynolds, for example.
Yep.
There was no one on my channel. 0 people had ever come on my channel. And he
Oh yeah.
just very nicely said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And what's weird is that he actually kind of helped me out a little bit. He's like, well,
Yeah,
you
of
should
course.
probably send this out as a tweet, and then you should probably do
Yeah.
that. And I was just like, oh, that's really nice of him. But
Live is its own animal.
yes, how did you here's the funny thing though. When I watch, despite like maybe saying that sometimes you hate things or you have to push through it or have trouble or whatever, you have like a really good attitude. And I feel like I'm always trying to look for this as a teacher because I'm always trying to look for examples so I can sort of talk to my students about or whatever. Do you think it's fair to say that you have a really good attitude when it comes to like your creative process and what you're doing? And if so, what do you attribute this good attitude and sense of humor about what you do too?
Rage.
Rage?
So,
Irony? Are we
so
using irony or
no,
is there
no.
is it
So
truth?
as you were talking, I was like, there's only one answer to this question.
Mhm.
I like a lot of men. I don't know about anybody else, but throughout my life, I grew up thinking I could solve problems with anger. Get loud.
Mhm.
Maybe it's an American thing, right? Get angry, let your emotions go, right? And just that was a masculine way of approaching things. Whatever. And then I had that kind of there's a line in Fight Club. How's that working out for you?
Right.
And part of me asked the rest of me and said, "How's that working out for you?" And I said, "It's not." Um,
Yes.
and so my conclusion was I was leading with it. And that was the problem. And so I'm not multiple personality disorder, but I got all the Mitches together and I said, guys, this isn't
Right.
working. So what does work? And I said, and I said, hallway Mitch, the guy when he's walking down the hallway, that guy works, right? At work. And that's reasonable and funny, right?
Mhm.
And reasonable and funny, that wins the day. People who may not have seen me for 6 months, and the last project we were on went really badly, and they see me and they're like, "Hey, how you doing, man?" And I could sense that, like, given a break for me, they realized like my other problems are way worse than him. So he was just passionate about the project, right? We just disagreed on how to get it done, but it got done, right? That kind of stuff. So when I had that meeting, I said, reasonable and funny lead the way that determines the board, right? And then I'd pushed anger away. And after a year of getting walked on, I was like, "Hey, anger, you're back." And so old Mitch came back and I was like, "You're back on the board of directors. You just don't lead the way." And so,
Right.
when I said that thing about when you see something, let yourself feel it, let yourself go. That's cool. That is cool. That's amazing. That's really neat. Use superlatives, right? And then go. Then get competitive, right? And then just go.
Mhm.
I think I can beat him. Like I think if I don't think it would take me 2,000 hours of practice to get better than that guy.
Yeah.
And so that competitive ego, it's vanity in some people's cases, not me. But that almost anger, jealousy, envy, all those
Yeah.
negative emotions, whatever,
Yeah.
use them. Something bad happened to someone. It was a very famous artist in the game world. His father died, and at the funeral, he said, he literally cut us out of the will and all these bad things he did to him and his kids and his grandkids, whatever. And I just wanted to write 2 words in the comments, and I felt like I'll leave him alone in his moment of grief. Use it.
Yeah.
Just like take it and go. That guy made me angry. There's lots of phrases like the best revenge is living well.
Yeah.
Just like don't be afraid of taking the negative emotions and using it as power to get something done, to be productive, to be a positive or better person, whatever you want.
I think that's really smart advice because I personally feel that it's silly, of course, but the idea here is that I think experiencing life and experiencing emotions is part of what it is to be a human being. And what the
Sure.
trouble is when we let those emotions control us. And it was very
Yep.
interesting to me when you mentioned how you said, okay, I'm going to set aside like raging Mitch and I'm going to bring out hallway Mitch. And then you mentioned how like after a year of that you felt that hallway Mitch was getting stepped on. And I
Yep.
think that's fascinating because what that tells me when I'm listening to you, and if you were like one of my students, is that you basically figured out that the key is not that you suppress one. The
Right.
key is not that you just all be one all of the time. The key is that you modulate back and forth between
Choose.
yes, between many different ideas. And I think that that's super, like, it's really, to be honest, as a teacher, it's like really heartening to hear that in an adult, an adult American these days.
So you want me
I
to
think
put it in
that's really cool.
childish modern terms?
No.
I do. I got one.
Go ahead.
Do it for the haters.
There you go.
Do
That
it for the people
works.
who think you can't.
Right.
Right? Just do it for them.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So then, tell me, what was it that actually? So let's kind of rewind all the way back to when you started. So Terrainosaur was a website before it was.
1999. Stupid joke, right? I love it to this day. I was building terrain since I painted my first miniature in 1983. It's in the other room. I always keep it nearby. I built my first terrain 1995, but I started really getting into it pretty hard. And by 1999, I had like lots of pictures of them. And I said, I just want to put it on a website. This is in the days when people used websites, not social media. And I said, I want to build a website that's just a gallery, a museum of pictures of my stuff, for no real reason, but so it doesn't just get lost. Because I don't keep terrain; it usually gets cannibalized or sold or whatever. And I said, I just want it to be like a big site of all the pictures I've got, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Hmm.
And the room groaned and laughed. And I said, that's it.
And you're like,
I got it. Right. So Tyrannosaurus Rex. And even today, other people will see it and go, ha. I'm like, yeah, it works. And
no, I
so
think it's great.
people have said, like, how do I make up something like that? And I'm like, I could come up with another one, but and it would be fine with me. I'm not saying it's the best idea ever, but it's really like it works for me. It's a
Was there
dumb joke
was there
that I
any
like.
like so it wasn't rage then? It was just Mitch having fun.
Yeah, but that name was like take something that other people groaned at, and instead of going, oh no, they didn't like
Right.
it. Go, ha! Now I'm going to do it on purpose.
Right. Right.
But yeah, so the website lasted for and it's still there.
Yeah, it's still up.
Yep, since 1999. And but then last year I just said, look, if you want people to see things, it must be on social media. Period. End
Hmm.
of story. Full stop. You don't have a choice no matter.
Or
No
it's got to
one's
be
going.
on, I believe, a BBS. I hear that BBSs are pretty big right now.
I hope you're kidding about that.
Well,
Yes,
you don't
thank you. That
know.
was
I
sarcasm.
just made this other joke. I'm actually running this.
Wow.
I'm running this entire show. I'm running this on an XT,
Yeah.
4.77 megahertz in monochrome.
Shut
It's
up.
it's great.
Yes. So yes, yeah. If you so yeah, Yak Tribes is, for example, a forum
Uh-huh.
for Necromunda builders. It still works and stuff like that. Several of us that are on YouTube and whatever follow it and go in there and stuff. But I can't imagine like how it's just easier to put it on Instagram. So yeah, it's just it's on social media. It's not.
Your photographs are really beautiful. Like I even remarked to you, and so you sent me some stills of work.
Yes.
Do you do those yourself?
Yes.
I
And I've
assume you
been
do.
yeah, so I'm pretty good at taking and I do call them stills, still images of terrain and miniatures, and I'm getting better at that as I go along. And I have to explain to other people, like they take pictures. I'm like, good God, let me explain some basics to
Right.
you. Clean your lens, please.
Right.
And stuff like that. You need more light, not two times as much light, 5 times, 10 times as
Yeah.
much light. Hit it with light.
Yeah.
But yeah, and yeah, so I'm learning f-stop, portrait mode, exposure right now, manual focus, autofocus, things like that, to try to help other people so that they can like provide content for me and stuff like that. But yeah, so
And
thanks
I
for
want
that.
the. Oh no, you're welcome. I mean, no, it was really good. I mean, I used to work in the biz, went to film school. I just want to
Mm,
say, but I really was impressed because, ladies and gentlemen who are watching right now, you should know that when we first logged on and on Zoom, Mitch spent more time than me getting everything in place, and you can kind of tell. You can tell if you take a look at where he's at. He's lighting himself much
oh,
better than I am. Though in my defense, I'm kind of like I'm just sitting in a den. But Mitch is like got like his proper setup for all
backdrop.
that. But yeah, he's got a real
Always put
backdrop
it.
and all that.
Always put miniatures or games in the backdrop. This is a really good game, by the way, ingenious.
Mm.
But yeah, so yeah, the and this is a spectrum of all the like D&D style games, board games. Necromunda, Space Hulk, Imhotep's a really good game.
Hmm.
And just so and up above are like a bunch of D&D stuff like that. So yeah, this is a good representation of the stuff that I like.
That's what you like, and that's what you play. Are you? What do you like about running Terrainosaur? Because you obviously
Everything.
what? Oh, Everything. Wow, that's a
So I
big.
like building terrain. I like painting miniatures. I like making videos. It's fun. I like putting it online. I like getting feedback, whatever. I do enjoy fighting the algorithms and the platforms. Fighting the lurkers and stuff like that, and trying to like get them
Get them to
to
come out and surface.
right, and stuff like that. So I like everything about it. But and of course, my bottom line is fundraising. I wouldn't do it for the vanity or the ego if that was it. I just couldn't be chasing more subscribers or anything like that. That's a false number. Because YouTube doesn't care how many subscribers you have; they care whether they watch.
Right.
So yeah, you look at DM Scotty, and I glanced the other day, and he has like 2 million views every month. It's like, oh my god! Like you don't see it in the video counts,
Yeah.
but people go back and watch his back catalog. So his views after the fact are really extreme, and they want watch time. But yeah, so I like everything about that.
But let me ask
The
you a question that's going to kind of separate something out here.
mhm,
If, because I know that you're using the channel for the forces of good, so you're
I
doing
hope
your
so.
fundraising for the for Shaky Painter and the Michael J. Fox
Thank
Foundation,
you.
right? But if you weren't doing that, and if you didn't feel the need to do that, would you be doing this just for fun?
No,
If you took that out of the equation, so it is primarily, if it's safe to say here, this is primarily for raising awareness and fundraising. Is that correct?
yes. So I am going to be building terrain and painting miniatures till I die. It's my hobby. It's what I do. So whether it stays online or not is always up in the air.
Hmm.
And a friend of mine, I'm going to try to tell the sentence carefully. A friend of mine said, uh, what do you think about doing things for like what other people are interested in? Do you do things for yourself or you do it for the fans? And I will summarize. I said F the fans.
Hmm.
Um, and he
Hmm.
was like, really? And I said, if you're not doing what you're passionate about,
Yeah.
just don't. Right.
Yeah.
And I said, so that doesn't mean that like I can't pick the ones that are more likely to be
Right.
what people are interested in.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I have to do it for a reason other than servicing
Yeah.
somebody other else's goals for whatever's going on. Um, and so there has to be a purpose. And I'm not going to get into like self-help stuff or whatever, but if like, and this is entirely possible. I told other people this isn't like some clickbait thing. It's entirely possible that one day I'll just go click, shut off the lights, and walk away. Because if it's not working for me,
Oh my
and
God, my subscribers just went up.
yeah, yeah, you wish.
I know, right?
Look, if I could get you more subscribers, I'd get me more subscribers, right? But yeah, so if I can't do what, so the question is, will the internet
Mm-hmm.
allow me to do what I want to do? And will they help me raise funds? Will they take a meaningful stance on the supporting my channel? So other people say support my channel, and what they mean is give me money.
Right.
Completely legitimate. I am completely like in favor of that. Let's, if it isn't giving money to some other thing,
Yeah.
like I don't know what, but
Yeah.
some other interest, whatever, and it's get into
Hmm.
the gaming world. It's good for their hobby. It's good for their channel. It's supporting their wives and kids, and their
Yeah. Sure.
all that kind of stuff. That's
Yeah.
great. So I'm,
They're
I'm definitely
making
not
an
complaining
honest
about it.
living.
Yeah, but I mean, a guy had 80,000 subscribers and just quit recently. 80,000.
Yeah.
And this is Bard's Craft, and I think the reason why was his Patreon was like $200 a month. I'm like, no, no. See, for me, think about it this way: would I take $200 a month in terms of donations? That's like, hey, I'm getting $200 a month, right?
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
bad. That's $2,400 a year.
Right.
It's a start. I get
Right.
more than that, but that would be a nice baseline if I could get that regularly. But if you're trying to make a living from it, oh my God, that
Yeah.
doesn't pay any bills.
But now let me ask you this though. So you're also helping people just in your tutorials. So in the same way that we think back to young Mitch when he was like in whatever age he was when he first started like with the war games and then when he eventually started doing the terrain and minis, he's trying to get better, I assume, and
Mhm.
slowly improving, moving forward. You're enabling and empowering other people in general who enjoy and like want to pick up a mini and they're like, it doesn't look as good as my friends, or oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
really get that feeling. I mean, you are helping them. You're helping them do better work
Yeah.
and you're
So I was
helping
thinking
them
about this.
improve.
I was thinking about this morning. Every single YouTuber, Instagrammer, anybody who's honestly trying to get famous or rich or whatever from this, uh, uses that word inspiration. Sometimes they use the word immersion, stuff like that, crafting, whatever.
Hmm.
But they always use that word inspiration. And I think they're trying to inspire them in the form of things like, you know, I'm going to teach you so that you gain confidence in your skills and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Very few of them are trying to tell you, like, here's how to get through the day.
Right.
Like so my next video very hardly lands on that when I was telling a friend something about this about like just approaches to life that might help you get out of a rut and say this is I'm not feeling it right. So I sometimes like have ways of putting things that uh, people accept and go, yeah, that sounds right, that sounds like truth. And so a little bit of truth is good. And on the other hand, it lets me get away with murder because then I can be really insulting my channels and nobody will say anything bad about them. So I have mocked other channels like really hard, and they loved it. And so I was like,
Right.
and
It's
nobody
cover.
ever says, "How do you get away with that?" I'm like,
Right.
what are they going to do, right? But that's not deliberately that way. But yeah, my sarcasm really works. I realized one of my things, my joke about the hashtag hobby streak.
Hmm.
I realized I never put it as a reel on Instagram. I put it as story. I put it as a post. I put it on
Hmm.
YouTube, whatever. I never put it as a reel, and there's a thing on there. I was like, okay, put it on there, and it got 15,000 views, and I was like, what?
Wow.
like that was it had been out for like months in
Right.
other platforms. And I just figured that out. And people people call those hard power flexes because it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
but so the key is, if I'm having fun and I get to like, oh, and I even told somebody, I was like, hey, are we cool? And he's like, yeah, why? I was like, because I've been making fun of you. And he's like, you have? I was like, yeah. And he's like, did you make fun of my family? I said, no. And he's like, then it's just
We're
banter.
cool.
Yeah, he
It's
literally said
all
that, right?
fun.
And then I said something about the way he builds things, and he's like, and this is so funny. It was Eric of Eric's Hobby Workshop, and I said, I make fun of the fact that you use sand so much in your builds, and he said, look, if you're going to make fun of sand, that's where I draw the line. I was like,
It's true.
just
Don't.
Eric's
Hey,
great.
if you're Anakin Skywalker too, don't joke
Yeah,
about sand. It's
but
coarse.
that's
I
the
don't like
joke.
it.
But he uses that on his channel. That's the point. You
Right.
literally are telling his joke. Stop that.
I know. Sorry. Look, my subscriptions just went up now.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
great.
Anyways,
But anyway, so you're helping in you are helping people. You helped me because I know that I've watched quite a few of
cool.
your
Thanks.
videos when I've been trying to cobble together my stuff. But let me ask you then, how would somebody completely just sort of starting out, uh, what are some of the things that they need to sort of be aware of or do? Like you taught
So
me about.
regardless,
Hmm.
for D&D or for Warhammer, I have the weirdest advice of what to build first.
No
Build a
problem.
pool. Build a pool.
Okay.
So it's a flat thing, right? It's a thing that you can use in your D&D game, right? There you're going to have pools, right? A pool about like this big, right? You're going to need it in as impassable terrain in your 40K or whatever terrain. You don't want to drive tanks through. Build a
Hmm.
pool. It's a piece of foam board, right? Cut in a circle. Put a little lip of it around the edge of anything on sand, anything you want, whatever. Paint it any pretty color you want to. And then people are like, oh, and then I have to learn resin. I'm like, it's not, don't get two part epoxy resin. Just get the realistic water stuff you pour out
Hmm.
of the thing from Woodland Scenics. Over the top, it'll be glossy. You can even just paint it with PVA glue, just white glue, and you've got a pool. And your friends will come over and go, cool pool. Um, right? Just it's the easiest thing. Next one you normally build is ruins, which is like trust me, there's 100 videos out there to build for ruins, and that's classic for D&D. You got to have something for, some ruined tower or something like that. Almost every D&D in the classic world started out with that, right? And then like from that point, okay, so you have two answers: crafting or terrain, right? So if you're crafting for D&D or building terrain for war games, there's two channels you need to watch. Two
Hmm.
channels, not me. And number one for D&D is DM Scotty,
Absolutely. I completely endorse that.
and number two is Mel the Terrain Tutor.
Oh, I hadn't even heard of.
Mel's big. Mel's written a
Wow.
book. It's actually in like bookstores. Mel the Terrain Tutor is the place you go to if you want to know how to do something like so snow on a roof, this is my favorite thing of his. Snow on a roof looks a certain way. It's thin at the top and thick at the bottom. That makes sense, right? But
Yeah.
how many of us would think of that? And he
Right.
shows you how to do that. And it's like, it looks like snow now, like it slid down, right? But it's just a technique. It's like a hair dryer. And sometimes I'm like, wait, there's a way. And I actually talked to somebody about this the other day. I was like, yesterday actually, I said something about like there's a thing that you can do, but I don't remember if it's add more salt or don't put any salt in it, right? And I'm like, no, Mel, what do you say? Oh, that's right, don't put salt in it. Okay, I forgot, right? And then go back. So I don't need to watch the whole video. I just skim through it right really quickly. But yeah, Mel the Train Tuner is well known as the how-to of pretty hardcore, like realistic. How do you do stuff?
I'm embarrassed. I hadn't even heard of him.
He's kind of inactive right now, but because he had some health issues, I guess. But, and so I told Scotty the other day, he has a video about I saw the word overgrown terrain. I was like, oh, I need to watch it, and I said I bookmarked it for eternity. So because it was really handy of how he had done certain things. There are certain things I would not do, like pencil shavings. I don't like that. But his other ones, he had several things about plastic plants from the store. And I was like, I've never done that. So I went out to the store and bought like a bucket full of various plastic plants, figure out which ones work for me and which ones don't. And that's really good for D&D. It's also good for, if you're playing Warhammer, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, anything like that. Yeah, it's still really handy information from him.
Yeah, I actually remember when, so I was out of RPGs for a while, and I made a move, and I found a bunch of friends to start role playing with, and I decided to start building terrain and minis and things like that.
Good.
And what I sort of discovered though was that I was making these really specific things that weren't always maybe as useful as they could be. And I made like this huge ship that I realized that I only had like one game. I mean, yeah, it looked cool, but it was only like one game that I could use it in, and I wasn't able to maybe repurpose it the way I wanted. But I like the idea of building these things that, at least for me and from my own standpoint, until I have like a library of which to draw from, I like the idea of working on sort of maybe some of the basics.
Yep.
And it's funny.
So pools, as a good example, pools
are
flat.
Was something I built.
Stores really easily
with a glue gun, and then just paint it.
So it's foam board, hot glue gun. Paint it, put a color underneath, take PVA glue, which you can let dry and it will make a thickness, but it's not the best for that. And then this other stuff called realistic water from Woodland Scenics. Just pour it in there, like 4 coats. It'll take you like 2 days for them all to dry and stuff like that. And people will come over and go, nice.
Right.
If you want to cut up little round green things that look like lily pads, do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, pools are great.
Well, with that, Mitch, I know that I had asked, and so I'm actually pretty excited here because this is the first time we're gonna have like a live on YouTube demo. But I had
I did it.
Oh, go ahead.
So I did it at the start. I wanted to tell you about 2 things. One is stippling. Now, since you asked about dry brushing, I did stippling earlier on. It's basically you take a brush, usually a very large, not a wet one like that, but a very large brush, sometimes makeup brushes, which I've been holding the whole time, right? And you tap it in paint, and then you just tap it on there, stippling, right? So you just stab it. There's no dry it off. There's no wipe it off or anything like that. You just go straight onto there. So you just go like this. I actually did it with this. Right out of the pot. So I did this. This is a more expensive one. This is an Army Painter one. And I literally went like this. And the only reason I'm going to tap it down to my paper here is just to smash the paint into the brush, not to wipe it off like dry brushing, right? And then I'm just going to stipple it. Okay, so you can see me stippling it.
Yeah. So you just literally like the brush end just goes straight at maybe a 90-degree angle toward the surface.
Yeah. Yes, I wouldn't do it any other angle, whatever. But you'll notice that as I go around, it starts to blend a little bit. I don't want blending. And if you stipple it and rotate the brush and stuff like that, you can get what I call this multi-tone stippling. So this is underhive ash and burnt umber, raw umber, burnt sienna. I always get those colors confused or whatever. So if you want something just brownish, then you just do this again, rotate the brush and stuff like that. Any human being can do this. I have a friend who's like, oh, I can't paint. I'm like, you can stab a brush at a thing.
Most people
and so you
can.
get this. Yeah, so you get this. You can do concrete effects like this, whatever. It's a little shiny because it's so wet.
I was just going to say, what sort of effects is this maybe good for?
So what it makes is a building that looks like let's grab one of these. This kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't call this painting. So this, I made a bunch of these. These I call them risers because they're things that I can put other buildings on top of and stuff like that. This stipple thing, originally you have a picture of this, by the way.
Yep.
Originally they were all this yellowish brown color, and I wasn't hugely a fan of them. And I thought, but if they're out in the ash wastes, if they're out in the wasteland or whatever, then they wouldn't have glass windows. They would have doors that were like,
Right.
hard to open, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so you'd have these rough-looking buildings that were habitation blocks, or commonly called hab blocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
That were just like people barely, eked out in existence and stuff like that. Then I got dumb and thought, okay, I didn't like it at first. This goes back to something we said earlier. Then I looked at them, I was like, they fit a certain environment. They fit the like wasteland environment in a modern setting and stuff like that. I was like, but what if these were like more concrete, these things up here? And so I tried to do that, and I ended up with a cold tone and a dark and a warm
Mm-hmm.
tone together. Like, it's okay. So I got 3 of them. So they stack.
Oh, wait. So does each one? Each one is a separate floor.
Yep, sure, if we want to call it that. So here we have a hab block. I didn't do this one, but so you see what I mean? I'll rotate it. So here
Yeah.
we have a hab block, all stippled.
Yeah.
If somebody came over and said, what is it? It's like, do you not see the ladders? Like, it's a building, right?
There you go.
So yeah, so stippling is a really good skill to learn, especially it's really basic, and yet you'll see professionals use it.
Yeah.
Of just stabbing the brush. The only reason why I have water out is just to throw my brushes in. I really don't need to do it.
To keep them
Just
fresh.
pre-wash. So I'm gonna
Uh.
wash them after this.
Okay.
But it's not. I just don't like them to totally dry out. The soap that I use to clean it out likes the acrylic to be a little bit softer. But yeah, so you can get these. This is really inexpensive. It works. It's playable. It's just they're actually risers, as I said, so I could put them out on my table, and then just put buildings on, because these are 6 inches by 6 inches,
Mm-hmm.
and just do something like that. It's only on the other side of this one was pour art,
Oh.
Pour. So you just take acrylic paints in this pour medium, and then you pour. And I have a video on that which did very poorly, and pour it on there.
Ironically.
And it spreads around and makes weird swirly patterns. So I was
Yeah,
practicing.
I actually saw that. I did see that one. That's right. I saw that video.
Right, so what did I
Excellent.
say about experimenting? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Have fun. And then the other one, so I'll show you the other one. I'll tell you about was so that's stippling, and what I
Uh-huh.
called
Uh-huh.
multi-tone or multi paint stippling. So
Okay.
I've got the this this is a Wells palette, a ceramic palette. I always have one of these.
When
Even
you say
pros
a
have these.
Wells palette, what is a Wells palette? Oh,
These are
it's got
Wells.
wells in it.
Yes.
Oh, okay, duh. Okay, got it.
Even pro painters have Wells palettes laying around.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they use a wet palette all the time. A wet palette is how, trust me, there's 100 videos on wet palettes. I don't use them. But yeah, so mixing paints in a Wells palette, you can put it in the dishwasher. You can just wash it in the sink,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just totally reusable. Inexpensive, looks really nice. But anyway, so yeah, these are the 2 colors. So there's no like trick to this. It's just stippling with multiple paints, and don't mix them together. So all I did at the start of it was I just put a little bit in there of one, a little bit another. I mixed it a little bit with a
Mm-hmm.
stick, and then I just immediately stuck the brush in, went stab, 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 stab. So pretty easy. Want to learn something else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
While we've got you.
yeah, so when people think about weathering metal, they think of what are commonly called cold tones. That is browns and oranges, things on the side of the spectrum close to red, right?
Right.
So it's rust, right?
Yeah.
So it's these bright orange patches, right, on metal and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and brown washes and things like that. Here, I'm not sure how.
No,
I'm getting
that's I
light
can see.
back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's that. So that's fine. You can do cold tone weathering, and that is, think of the Statue of Liberty. That's verdigris.
Right.
So cold tones are on the blue end of the spectrum, and cold tone weathering, and again, I'm just making that phrase up, is 3 colors, and that's Nylic oxide or any kind of oxide, baby blue, fluid color. Is that what that is? Yeah. So that's your friend for producing that effect of the statue that's really corroded or anything like that. People love to do that with statues. Go ahead. You looked
I
like
was
you're
going
gonna
to
ask a
ask
question.
when you shook it, did I hear a rattle? Is there
Yeah. So that's called an agitator bead.
Oh, okay, because I was going to say I'm used to hearing again, and I'm so sorry to ask these questions, but like to me, this is a big new world. But like I'm used to hearing the rattle from like a spray
Yeah.
paint can. But
So I have so many paints that I don't always get to use all of them. So they sell them, and this seems like a strange thing to buy, but if you actually buy them from a game company like the Army Painter and stuff like that, they're stainless steel, so they're rust free. They can't
right,
rust.
right,
And so you drop one in every pot, and if it takes a while for it to like get off the bottom, and you're like, you need to do that more.
right.
And they're cheap. You're only going to buy one thing of 50 of them for the rest of
And
your
this is
lifetime.
something kind of standard that you'll do for paints that you buy, maybe
Yes,
paints that like you probably aren't going to use so much or you think are going to
I put
sell.
one
Or
in every single
oh,
pot.
everything. Got it.
And somebody asked me if I recover them, and I'm like, well, I'd have to use the whole pot, but yes, I suppose I rarely go through a whole pot. I mean, it's going to be something like a really common color for me to do that.
Right.
But yes, so that's it. I don't do it with contrast paints or shades because there's no need to. Yeah, there's one in there. So the three things you need to do Statue of Liberty type verdigris is Nylic Oxide. There are many versions of this. You can do it with just a bright baby blue paint. Um, Nuln Oil, the classic black wash. Nuln Oil, like every person who has any kind of GW miniatures has Nuln Oil. It's a
Mm-hmm.
big pot of black wash, right? And it's quite cold. That is, there's no brown in it or very little. And the other one, coincidentally, is this color called Gray Knight's Steel. So it's just another silver paint, but it's bluish. Okay, and so it's handy in that it doesn't lean into the brown spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And what you can do is just paint your thing in
Yeah.
streaks of, and you can use brown too. There's nothing wrong with adding splotches of color. But yeah, so this is a lot of verdigris, and I put it like wherever it looks like there might be a pipe and water had flown out of there. I put a lot of extra there.
Right.
And I've been playing with stencils lately. So I played with stencils here and down here. I
Mm-hmm.
can't gesture with my left hand very well. See if I can. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff like that. Yeah, and I tried stencils with letters here and here, and it looked horrible because it was too bright. And I did it with a warm color on purpose that is like a bleached bone or something like that. And I was like, don't like it, so I went stipple right over the top of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you get this color, and then you can also just go to, if you're interested, you can go ahead and do your verdigris.
Yeah.
Um, but then, someone got it. Yeah, just go ahead and do rust anyway. Um,
Yeah. I
um,
tell you, it seeing it like just talking to you over the last like few minutes essentially is really making me miss painting
yeah, good.
and building. Like it's been a while for me because I've been kind of moving around a little bit for the last year and a half or two
Yeah,
years, and I made a big move about a couple of years ago, and I gave away all of my tiles, my terrain, my minis, my buildings. I gave them
yep.
to one of my students actually
Yeah, I
to
knew that was coming.
try to indoctrinate him
Yeah,
into
yeah,
the hobby, and so since then. But yeah, it's really beautiful stuff, Mitch. Thank you for showing us that.
no problem.
Um,
And you can do that on bases, by the way. So instead of
mhm,
every time you're gonna like if you've got Necromunda 40K miniatures, you
mhm,
don't have to go straight to the Rise of Rust orange, whatever. You can just use a bluish tone, and it'll then your miniature will stand out more because there's a bright orange underneath his feet. So there's
mhm.
ideas there.
Well, let me shift gears here a little bit because you've mentioned it a few times, and it's something I'm personally curious about because it's
Mhm.
something that actually my father had. But and we've mentioned, of course, that you use the channel for the forces of good to raise funds for Parkinson's research with Shaky Painter and
Yep,
the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Can you tell us what is Parkinson's and how does it generally affect a person, or are there different
sure.
forms of
Well,
it, or
yeah. So there's. Suddenly says my name on the screen. So all
that's okay.
right. So was that me?
That's your name has just come up. I think you just turned off your camera.
Okay. Give me a second.
No
I
problem.
don't. Cat hit something. I don't know what happened.
Oh, it may be that, and that would not surprise me. There was a cat in the screen just before.
Give me 1 second. So
No problem. No
I do
problem.
not know what I need to do.
Not a problem at all.
Any idea? I'm in Zoom.
I would imagine probably if you look in the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom
Oh, start video.
window, yeah, there should be something. There you go.
Wow, that was weird. I can't bump the mouse. Thanks, Willow. Um,
Probably. How ironic. And that's the funny thing. You know what's funny is that earlier on, we're so used to talking about mice that when you mentioned how the cat was
yeah,
walking over your mouse, you didn't even make a joke about a real life mouse, which
yeah,
tells you what sort
yeah.
of an era we live in
Trouble.
where we're starting to forget that mice are mammals.
Yes.
Rodents, I should say,
Yeah.
that are scurrying around. But at any rate, I'm so sorry, Mitch. Can you
Sure.
explain?
So Parkinson's is a neurological disorder.
Hmm.
It's basically brain damage. It's idiopathic, meaning they have no idea what causes it. They have no idea how to cure it. It isn't something that is like passed down through generations. It isn't something you ate. You can't diet it away. You can't, change your nutrition. It's not from carcinogens. They have no idea what causes it. The only way that they know that you have Parkinson's is through the symptoms when you're alive or an autopsy after you're dead. Um, and so it is closely connected to Lewy body dementia, which I think you said your father had.
Right.
So my neurologist said uh, 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 Alzheimer's starts with dementia and leads to Parkinson's symptoms, and Parkinson's starts with physical symptoms and generally leads to dementia. Something like 75% of all people with Parkinson's end up with dementia. I guarantee that's going to be me too. So anyway, so the classic symptoms and the one that sent me to the neurologist was when my tremor in my left hand went bilateral. And I
What
said,
does
okay, that's not
bilateral mean?
both hands.
Oh, okay.
So it was unilateral and went bilateral.
Uh-huh.
And so when both hands started shaking, I was like, okay, this isn't me playing too many video games and WASD being difficult with my hand, right? I'm like constantly doing that, which is what I always had assumed it was. It was only when I was cold or whatever. Okay, trouble. Okay, do what you want. Anyway, so yeah, I went in, and I got the appointment, and after doing my research, I knew I had Parkinson's. Now you need to be careful about self-diagnosis, but I said to myself, when I go in, he's going to notice immediately that I have Parkinson's, and it is not Parkinsonism. Parkinsonism is symptoms, but for example, having Lewy body dementia or
Mm-hmm.
Alzheimer's, but not actually having Parkinson's. If you get in a car accident, you end up with tremors, or you have essential tremors, or something like that. That's not Parkinson's. But I wrote down every weird thing I was experiencing on a little index card. And when I went in and talked to him, we got done. He got that look on his face and said, "I think you're correct. You are correct. You have Parkinson's." And he went through and he said, he had to give the speeches like, if it was Parkinsonism, it would be this, but you have Parkinson's. It was this, but you have Parkinson's. And he had to like give me the speech. And and in the end, he said, "By the way, when you walked in 15 seconds, I knew you had Parkinson's." And I said, "We've already had this conversation." And he went, and I said, "I knew you were going to say that."
Right.
I said, "It's so glaringly obvious." And so, yeah, and they put me on L-Dopa, levodopa, and many other medications. I take medication 9 times a day now, and I do not have a mild case of it. But so it gives me tremors. I'm now at the point of joking that my left hand is just a claw, and what I mean by that is I have almost no manual dexterity in my left hand anymore. I have said in videos, sometimes I give it a command and it does not react. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really like there's very little I can do. And yet sometimes I'll do something
Right.
like that, and it'll suddenly pick up. And the reason why is it's a resting tremor. So if I give it a command and it's going to react, it's okay. But since I'm not giving it commands, it just shakes. So it's pretty bad. It also Parkinson's briefly also comes with usually pretty severe mental side effects. Anxiety and depression. I was always high strung and hyperactive, and it just
Mm-hmm.
nailed me with anxiety. And I mean, like standing at the kitchen sink at two in the afternoon, just going, I am terrified, and everything is fine.
Right.
Everything in my life is just grand. It's just great. If the
But
money's fine, the job's great.
but
Yeah, except I'm afraid
mm-hmm.
because that's fear. That's all it is it's dread. It's fear of fear, but there's nothing on the horizon to
Right.
scare you. So I got hit with that. And then the symptoms have gotten worse, as they do.
Can I ask
Uh,
when was it that you were diagnosed or maybe when?
2018. So
So relative.
2018, I was diagnosed.
Uh-huh.
2015, I should have been diagnosed. I
Mm-hmm.
went to a doctor with a tremor in my left hand and some other things, and the first words out of his mouth were, it's not Parkinson's." And I went, "I didn't think it was. What's
Right.
Parkinson's?" Right? And it was. It was dead on. If I saw me in 2015, I'd have gone, "That's Parkinson's,"
Yeah.
because it was characteristic. I can now detect Parkinson's like when I see it in other people who I wouldn't like bring it up with them or anything like that. But I was sitting there at a game club once, and I heard a sound behind me, and I said, "That's Parkinson's." And what was he had a bag of crisps, what you would call potato chips.
Yeah. Our
um,
fancy word for it in the U.S.
yeah, and all I heard was tick, 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 tick. And it was because as he
He
like
was,
hit like this, there's a
yeah,
certain like hertz, right?
yeah.
And it's this, and I could and he was holding it in his left hand, and I looked over and I saw the hand shaking, and I thought that guy's got Parkinson's. And I heard his friends talk to him, and then they couldn't hear his voice. I was like, that's that hoarse voice that you can't hear.
Hmm.
And so I asked him about it later, and he's like, yeah, it was Parkinson's. He can drive, I can't. My hands resting tremors. As soon as I go like this and my arms relax, my hands just start shaking, and I'm incapable of driving. So that was not. It's not a loss in England. Nobody drives here anyway. But yeah, so the truth is that there's no hope for a cure, but the treatment is effective, and it's getting better. And that's part of what Michael J. Fox's foundation is doing. Is they know what will treat Parkinson's, and that's just give you more artificial dopamine, right? That's the problem. Give you the motion, the control over your motion center and
Hmm.
stuff like that. But if they give you too much, it's really horrible. And there's movies about this, like Awakenings and things like that. I call it a runway. You can only go so far down the runway before they can't give you more. So they're like, all the medical community is like, they want to give you the minimum amount they can to like get you through the day. Even though I know right now I could go take more, and within an hour I would be just fine. But I can't because that's going to punish future Mitch quite badly.
So
Um,
what would the effect be? Because you mentioned really quickly, like,
oh, you want to see the effect?
if you're comfortable showing it, I think in the interest of, yeah, absolutely. If
Okay, so this is the effect. The effect is I'm spending a lot of energy right now in my brain to relax, to calm down,
yeah,
and to send commands to my hand saying, I'm paying attention to you, so you don't need to
right.
shake. But the moment I look away, even now I can't maintain it because my left hand's starting to shake. Michael J. Fox did this in an interview once where he calmed down, and they were like, "Well, can't you just like do that?" And
Do
it's like,
that all the
do you
time
have
then?
any idea? It's like you're shaking at like negative 20
Uh-huh.
degrees Fahrenheit, and somebody says stop shaking.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So it takes
So
a
yeah,
tremendous amount of focus and energy in order to
yes,
maintain that.
yeah, and it's not like when I'm walking, my left leg drags. I can't do anything about it. So now I'm on a walking stick. I'm mostly practicing right now, but sometimes
Hmm.
like if I'm out and shopping or something like that, and the left leg just starts to drag, I have to get it out, because I'm like I'll get nowhere at this speed.
Right.
So yeah, it's so your fear, of course, is a lack of independence. So yeah, so the first thing the Michael J. Fox Foundation was looking for a biomarker, which was any sign that they could just give a blood test and go, that's Parkinson's. They still
Right.
haven't found it. So instead, they're doing work on treatment, and again, so like they're already giving people drugs, and other things that are um, to get. I really don't want to bore you with this, but to try to
No,
get.
I'm no, no.
So what they're trying to do is get dopamine into your brain.
Hmm.
Drugs don't like to get into your brain because there's this thing called the blood-brain barrier. So they have to find ways of permeating the blood-brain barrier with basically poison, well,
Hmm.
something that your brain is trying to avoid getting in there, anything that isn't created by the body or whatever. And so there are agonists, which are drugs that push the dopamine into your brain, and get you relief from your symptoms. The other one, and this is a big one, is deep brain stimulation, which is brain surgery. They put the electrodes in your brain, and it sends a signal that calms your physical symptoms.
Hmm.
Um, and it's not always 100% effective, but something like 75% of people who get deep brain stimulation get symptom relief. And the thing is, then you can take fewer drugs and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and it extends your runway.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I think in like a week or two, I go for my first assessment with the doctor because I
Oh,
passed
so it's
certain tests.
something you're looking into doing.
Yeah. So doctor, one of my neurologists said, "Are you keen on that?" And I said, "Yes." And what I meant was, yes, I want it. So I am the only person on earth, I believe, whose doctors are tell them I need to drink more, because I'm diabetic, and if you have a drink before you go to bed, you produce less glucose overnight, right? And I really don't drink. And they're like, it would be okay if you had a glass of wine before bed. I'm like, okay, sure. Eat more salt.
Hmm.
And that's because I have low blood pressure because of Parkinson's. And if you eat more salt, you absorb more water, and your blood pressure remains higher. And I'm really looking forward to brain surgery. So I need to drink more, eat more salt, and get brain surgery. That's what I'm excited
That's your
about.
combination of things.
I don't recommend you watch videos on deep brain stimulation unless you're ready for crying.
But now,
They're like really motivational.
but, but let me ask you this though. So they are permanently in one's brain. And
Yep.
do you trigger them at a certain point, or are they always working, or?
So assuming it affects you, so you get the electrodes in the brain, it comes down underneath the skin to a object beneath your clavicle.
Oh, okay.
Then you've got an external thing that turns it on or off, whatever.
Hmm.
And they uh, you have to wait 6 weeks. It's not turned on immediately after
Hmm.
surgery. Wait
Right.
6 weeks. I think you're then have to be off medication, which is going to be an interesting process. And then that you come in and then they turn it on to see whether it affects you. So when you see a DBS video, that person is shaking like a leaf, and then they
Hmm.
hit the button and he goes, and he just calms down because he's totally off medication. So I'm always like, it's not fake, but like they're not going to test it while you're on medication. It's
Right.
partially effective, you know. So anyway, yeah, and so it's a big deal. And the last one I saw was a guy who said, I haven't been able to eat cereal in 7 years. And then so because the spoon would shake even on
Hmm.
medication.
Right.
So it's often he shows like literally the spoon is just shaking, the milk is cereal going everywhere. He hits the button and then he eats with the spoon. And there's
Mm.
almost no tremor to it. So
Mm.
yeah, that's another people like, oh my God. And I'm like, oh, remember again, one of them is completely off, right? Like,
Right.
so yeah,
Right.
but yeah, so the goal is, of course, if you get deep brain stimulation and it affects you and it works for you, then the thing is you can go in many cases of those 75%, you
Yeah.
can go off all medication,
Yeah.
for that, which means you also go off the medication that's causing you to be so restless mentally and physically. Um, and so you can get rid of the side effects because that's the goal is to get rid of side effects. So yeah,
Right.
I'm super excited. And if you think I'm not going to live stream my surgery, you're nuts.
Are you gonna
Like
do it?
I would, I'm so everybody said you should paint a miniature while you're on screen. I'm like, that's exactly what Games Workshop wants. Is guy dies while painting their
Well,
miniature on the screen.
would you be awake during the
You
surgery?
can't. So in the past, the answer was yes,
Uh-huh.
because they wanted to see if you're sick. And
I was gonna
there's
say.
a famous video of a guy playing a banjo,
Yeah.
um, and he couldn't play at all. And then they're like, "How's that?" And he goes, you know, whatever immediately. And I always thought it was funny because I remember that video from back in the '90s. He gets out of surgery and he runs down the hallway, and what does the surgeon do? Yells at him for running in a hospital.
Oh, that's true. You shouldn't
It's
be
like,
doing
don't run in
that.
the
It
hospital.
is
I was
true.
like, but yeah, so he went, that was pretty extreme. But yeah. So yes, so painting a miniature in the middle of brain surgery, I would absolutely love that. That would be fantastic.
I mean honestly, like the teacher in me, the person that wants people to learn, that wants people to become aware of things, that wants people to feel, something that motivates them or something that inspires them or something that like enlightens them in some way. I mean, I think that would be a very I mean, I would be fascinated and
Yeah, me too. It'd be really interesting. And so the point of how to paint with tremor is that first
mhm.
significant video I did was to point out not necessarily people with Parkinson's, but people who have essential tremors. And Jeremy from Black Magic Craft has really bad essential tremors.
Mhm.
And he released his video like immediately before I released mine. So that was either good or bad. It was,
Mhm.
informative for both of us,
Yeah.
to his base and
Yeah.
to the people I was just building up, whatever. And so that teaching people you can paint better
Yeah.
even if you're not listening to, even if you don't have tremors. So I went to calligraphy channels and they show you how to paint straight lines and stuff like that. And what do? They pull it towards themselves.
Right.
If you're trying to do a straight line like this, good luck with that, right? So if you reach outside of your classic,
Yeah.
here's how to paint a demon prince, or here's how to paint
Yeah.
your elf or whatever, you can find stuff out there that's like really beneficial. And so that was what that video
Well,
series was
that
for.
that is actually originally one of the things that got me on the channel. And the irony,
Good.
though, is that I wasn't looking for uh, painting stuff. I was
Right.
actually looking up stuff about. So, as Mitch mentioned, and my father actually was afflicted with Lewy body disease, or I'm sorry, Lewy body dementia
Right.
and Parkinsonism. So,
Right.
Mitch very kindly explained because I had actually been kind of confused about what the difference was between Parkinsonism and Parkinson's.
Right.
So now I'm a little smarter for that. That's what originally, because I was doing Google searches, I was doing like YouTube searches, and probably the algorithms at Google or YouTube like mixed the two, like
Yeah.
minis and Parkinsonism or something like together. And that's actually how I discovered your channel were
Good.
those videos on painting with tremors.
It
Um,
still gets views and comments to this day.
yeah, I believe it. And to me, I mean, like you said, like a lot of those the techniques are inspiring. obviously not just to people that maybe might have Parkinsonism or Parkinson's, but also to people that, just a painter. If you're a painter, like the things that you use in the video to me are useful.
So I did a video called "How to Paint Like an Amateur," um,
Mm.
because everybody else is trying to teach you how to paint like a pro,
Right,
and I
right.
wasn't sure whether it would succeed or not. And it did fine. It's got
Yeah,
like 3,000-4,000 views or whatever. But those are the two videos that I put together that are like, if you watch how to paint like an amateur, and you watch how to paint with tremors or whatever, like how to paint with tremors shows you how all the famous painters hold a miniature,
hmm,
like how they physically hold it.
right,
Try to get them to tell you about that. It's too boring for them. They can't do it.
right.
They're like, I spent 3 hours on a leg here today. Can I not show you how to hold a miniature?
Yeah,
And so it's too rudimentary. So yes, this sounds weird, but for somebody named Terrainosaur, some of my most popular videos are how to begin painting. And I really
right.
have a second one in mind of how to paint like an amateur too, because there's some other things that I wanted to say about uh, how I feel like there's a technique and a style that you can paint like that doesn't go in the same direction as the washes and the
Yeah.
highlights and the shadows and the object source lighting and the extremes of the pro painters who have a very specific style called glazing. Um, and like if you don't want to go that direction, there is another way that I think people would be very, very interested in. And the pro painters would hate it if I did that video. They'd be like, they know me and they like me. It's fine we get along, but it's like, at least some of them do. But yeah, so they'd be like, I don't like that, because it's not, it's not that pinnacle.
Right.
So you want something inspirational?
Yes,
So I'll give
absolutely.
this. I always say this, that pro painters are terrified of terrain. If you spent 3 hours on a leg, you do not want to paint a giant robot this big. You don't. They're
Hmm.
literally afraid of it. It affects their motivation. Um, but the thing is, they're a ladder, right? There is a best painter. There's a best blender, a best light sourcer, best eyes and pupils, right? That's a thing. It's a fact. Like he is more accurate than you because they're trying to be realistic, right? There is no real best terrain builder. There's more experienced ones,
Hmm.
and maybe more creative ones, whatever. But there's no best. So you can be an expert at something that you created in terrain building or crafting or whatever you want to call it in 3 months, because there's no ladder. You can go build a pool, build some ruins, and sit there and go, that went pretty well. I wonder if I could do this or that or whatever. And again, study, experiment, learn your math, go find the materials you need. And I think you could be like a decent terrain builder and get a lot of attention in short order. So I'm not saying that like you should do it so that you get more likes and views and stuff like that. But if you want to know that you're doing well,
Hmm.
you can get feedback immediately, and it's quick. It's like that. I have not seen that before. That's cool. I
Mm.
have not seen anybody do that with a turnip before.
Exactly, right? I never would have guessed you could do that sort of
Yeah.
thing with a
That's
turnip.
a thing, by the way.
What? It is?
I
Turnips and
it's the
painting?
deep end. Turnip 28 is a thing. It is a miniature painting style.
Oh, okay.
I am not kidding. It is
What
so
is
bizarre.
well, what is it if
So
I
it's
could
it's
ask?
like it's like living people, like wizards and warriors, whatever, have overgrown with roots. Um, I can't explain it. It's root
Okay.
vegetable based Blanchitsu.
All
When
right.
Dana
Well,
Howell,
I have something to Google right after we get
don't
off
do
of.
that. Dana Howell's video does it. It's just like it's insane.
Oh.
But but the point is that you may come up with something that nobody else has come up with. And I've come up with all kinds of weird things, and I like it and it's fun, and I don't care if it gets 100,000 views because
Yeah.
sometimes people want to do that Mel the Train Tutor and DM Scotty thing of I need to know how to do this for my game.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Not like um, how do I do something that I've never heard of before?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, Mitch, just to sort of close out, I wanted to ask you, like, really kind of specifically here. Um, is there some sort of product or maybe an accomplishment or work that you've created that you're like particularly proud of? It could be a thing, it could be an idea, it could be like any number of.
I don't mean what Brits would call whingy, but
What's
that
whingy?
rust of whinging is whining.
Oh, 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 okay.
So I don't want to be whiny about this, but that Rust Effects video is hot. That Rust Effects video is nice. It is so much fun. The idea of taking paint and smashing it onto a model without a brush,
Mm-hmm.
and taking a T-shirt to paint with.
Mm-hmm.
When he did that, and when you see his pictures, which Paolo Puente let me use, I'm proud of it because I didn't necessarily come up with it, but I really developed well. It's a good video too.
Mm-hmm.
But that thing of going smash. I meant to bring out a piece of that. I don't want to go in the other room, but it looks like rust. It looks crusty, and up close from a distance. I've got a terrain set that it looks better than like any other what are called Mars terrain sets. That looks good. And so I've always been really really proud of that video, and it's the one that I thought would be like, okay, it's got a name. Like I
Right.
know a lot of people don't know who Paolo Parente is, but once you figure it out, you're like, oh, okay, cool. He was fully vocally endorsing whatever. It's a great technique. His pictures are stunning. The result was like, wow, that's cool. So yeah, I was pretty proud of that.
Cool.
But um, I'm trying to think. I honestly don't remember what I've done lately because I've been tied up with some other things. Uh,
Yeah, minor
give
brain
me. I'm literally
surgery
going to
and
go to my. Yeah, Brian. No, I've been like on the channel. So give me a second. So recently I did some goofy ones that were just for fun. Little 1 minute ones. Stupid display based one. Um, blah 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 blah. The Grimdark series is good. I will continue that in the future. And that's Grimdark is just the name for the Warhammer 40k
mm-hmm.
style terrain.
Mm-hmm.
I will continue doing Old Hammer stuff, which is like 1995
Cool.
style stuff. Yeah, everybody will like that because Dana is involved and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm just going to scroll backwards a little bit. Blah, 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 blah. Yep, yep. So yeah, if I scroll back and go, which one was I most proud of? Yeah, that Rust Effects tutorial was like that was a good video. But I need to do. Let me see. What am I thinking? Like, what's the best upcoming thing? I've got some stuff for Instagram that I just
Mm-hmm.
got photographed today. That was so hard to do. It took me 2 weeks just to get ready to photograph it, and it was
Oh,
already painted
wow.
because I needed the. So these are the
What is it?
backdrops.
What do you?
So these
Oh,
so these are the
for
backdrops. I
what
was
you're
doing
photographing?
cold tone in the
Mm-hmm.
background. And in the foreground are my Necromunda pipes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long story, but basically, so I painted half, gave them to a friend who painted the other half, and he delivered them 2 weeks ago, and I just got ready to take the photos because I needed to learn or relearn how to photograph the terrain with miniatures in a way that like it makes you think that I'm photographing the miniatures, but I'm actually photographing the terrain. So
Mm-hmm.
the miniatures are there to make the
Right.
terrain make sense, right?
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying because you can't like have the miniatures out of focus and the terrain in focus and maybe vice versa because then well, if it's vice versa, then you can't really see the terrain that you're trying
Yeah,
to.
it gets too busy, right?
Right,
So
right.
the two things I need to work on next in terms of like presentation is verisimilitude, which is more the simulation of reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the other one is composition. And composition is everything of like I did it with an eye towards how you see it, not just how it
Yeah,
looks. So that like
yeah.
some of the best builders, they build it with knowing full well that the angle is going of the photography is going to be here. And I said this to one of them. I said this to Saul Vince. I was like, is this done? And he said yes. And I said, is it a terrain piece or is it a display base? Because he normally builds display bases, and he says it's
Right.
a terrain piece. I said, good, because the composition on this sucks.
Oh no.
He was like, it has right, it has none.
Yeah.
There's a point where a display base is meant to be viewed from
Right.
a certain perspective, but terrain isn't. It's not always from that perspective. Because I was like, there's no way to put a miniature on this that isn't blocked by a railway or something
Yeah.
like. I was like, what? Yeah. So yeah, it's really interesting. So those are two things I need to work on.
Well, Mitch, thank you so much for joining us. For those of you that are watching at home, I have put links in the description below to Terrainosaur on YouTube and on Instagram. But I've also put links to Shaky Painter and the Michael J. Fox Foundation in there as well. So please do. Uh, it's a worthy cause. Please do consider it. Every bit, every dollar can help.
Yep.
And Mitch, I just want to thank you personally for what you do. I do appreciate the fact of I appreciate the reasons behind your channel very much.
Good.
Um,
Thank you.
and so if you folks have enjoyed watching the program tonight, please do consider liking and subscribing and like ringing that bell or getting that bell to ring or whatever it is you do. If you can, every subscription like helps. Yes, young fellow next to the Warhammer
Yeah.
40K paints.
So hold on. So let me tell Matt's viewers the
Oh,
truth. Subscriptions are irrelevant. The bell is irrelevant.
oh.
What? God, what happened with my thing, my video game? Sorry, hold on.
That's
It
okay.
just shut off on its own. So subscriptions are irrelevant.
Okay.
Bells are irrelevant. Watch time is important. Watch
Oh,
Matt's videos all the way to the end. If you are a subscriber of his, watch the video all the way to the end so
thank
he
you.
gets watch time. YouTube cares about watch time. They care about eyes on the screen.
Mm.
So do that. Yes, the bell is important, subscription and whatever. But
Hmm.
the two things that matter are go and share it somewhere and watch it all the way through. There you go.
Thank you. Well, Mitch, thank you in more ways than one. And for you viewers, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Everybody out there, have a safe and happy game in your future. And have a good night.
Go England.